Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to unpack a massive, ground-up regulatory shift that's currently reshaping India's banking sector. If you've been tracking compliance at all lately, you already know the rules of the game are changing incredibly fast. So today, we're going to break down some fascinating new insights into exactly what this all means for data, technology, and regulatory accountability. Here's our roadmap for this Explainer. First, we'll look at the new RBI mandates. Second, security versus data governance. Third, the multidisciplinary auditor. Fourth, expanding the audit ecosystem. And finally, building professional capacity. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the new RBI mandates and this real paradigm shift in banking compliance. So the Reserve Bank of India has literally just dropped 3 massive compliance mandates on banks. And this completely redefines how they have to govern information and deploy tech. We're not just looking at one isolated rule change here. Regulated entities now have to comply with the Digital Personal Data Protection Act of 2023, align with the RBI guidance on artificial intelligence, and adhere to the draft guidance on data governance. Each of these is a heavy lift on its own, but combined, they demand a fundamentally new approach. Now, if we take a closer look at that draft guidance on data governance, there's one specific provision that's really turning heads. The guidance explicitly expects these regulated entities to get independent audits from CERT impaneled auditors. And at first glance, sure, that makes perfect sense, right? CERT has maintained a highly respected panel of InfoSec auditors for years. But as we dig into the source material, a major complication starts to emerge. Which brings us to Section 2, security versus data governance, and shattering the illusion. We really have to ask a critical question here, and we need to answer it right away. Are we just rebranding what cybersecurity professionals already do? Is data governance just a fancy, updated term for locking down networks and configuring firewalls? Well, the answer is a hard no. Traditional information security focuses almost entirely on technical controls, preserving the CIA triad of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Data governance, on the other hand, demands oversight of DPDPA compliance, AI accountability, and the actual ethical use of data. It's not just about keeping the hackers out anymore, it's about how an organization legally and rightfully manages the data it already has inside. A true data governance audit evaluates really complex organizational processes. Auditors now have to look closely at data ownership and stewardship. They have to assess this concept of a single source of truth to ensure data quality is solid across the board. They've got to evaluate AI algorithms for inherent fairness and risk, and confirm that there's proper board-level oversight. You just can't assess those things through a standard vulnerability assessment or pen test. It requires a totally different lens. Let's move on to Section 3. The multidisciplinary auditor, the missing link in all of this. The source material makes this really striking observation. It notes that an auditor could be an absolutely outstanding network security expert and yet still have completely limited exposure to privacy law, data governance frameworks, AI risk management, or regulatory accountability. Compliance today inherently involves legal interpretation. When AI is involved, you're evaluating things like explainability and human oversight. So even the absolute best network pen testers aren't equipped to handle this alone because their training is technical, it's not legal or governance-based. To actually handle this, the sheer breadth of multidisciplinary expertise required is staggering. An auditor assessing these new RBI mandates has to understand law, technology, privacy, AI governance, and risk management. And that's on top of information security and audit methodology. The takeaway here is incredibly clear. No single traditional discipline is going to cut it anymore. We're literally witnessing the birth of a mandatory new skill set. This perfectly sets up Section 4, expanding the audit ecosystem and adapting to our new reality. So, the Foundation of Data Protection Professionals in India, or FDPPI, has maintained for a few years now that the solution to this gap is the creation of a totally separate, distinct profession, independent data auditors, or IDAs. Since the DPDPA already envisions independent audits for significant data fiduciaries, we absolutely need professionals who sit right at that intersection of law, governance, and technology to objectively evaluate these complex organizations. But I want to be really clear about something here. Independent data auditors are not replacing traditional InfoSec auditors. Cybersecurity is still as critical as it's ever been. The goal here is to expand the existing CERT ecosystem to complement it. Think of it kind of like adding a new wing to a hospital. You still need your expert surgeons for sure, but now you also need specialized neurologists. We need an ecosystem that has room for professionals who specialize specifically in data governance alongside the cybersecurity folks. Okay, rounding out with Section 5, building professional capacity and the path forward. To actually build these much-needed competencies, FDPPI hasn't just pointed out the problem, they've actually structured a clear capability development ladder. This is to ensure professionals are genuinely ready for the weight of these audits. It starts off at the probationary level, or PIDA, moves up to accredited, or AIDA, and then culminates in the Certified Independent Data Auditor, or CEDA. Having this structured pathway is just essential for creating an ecosystem of truly competent professionals. And why is a structured pathway so crucial? Well, because the regulatory stakes are incredibly high right now. Professional certification for this new era just can't rely solely on someone's past experience in IT. Past experience doesn't cover brand new AI regulations or fresh data privacy laws, right? It requires serious academic rigor, structured learning, and objective assessment. That is exactly why FDPPI collaborated with the ACTE-accredited Mira School of Business to ensure these certifications are grounded in formal, undeniable academic and practical evaluation. And for professionals who are looking to bridge this gap and step into this new arena, the opportunity is already here. There's a 3-day Certified Independent Data Auditor program taking place from the 21st to the 23rd of August 2026 in Bangalore. It directly tackles the exact mandates we've been talking about today: DPDPA compliance, the RBI's AI and data governance guidance, and the DGPSI framework. It's exactly the kind of practical, formal evaluation needed to master this emerging multidisciplinary profession. To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. The regulatory framework in India has already evolved. The era where data governance is treated as being just as critical as cybersecurity has officially arrived. The rules are written. But the real challenge isn't whether these audits should happen, it's whether our workforce is truly prepared to enforce them. Do we actually have enough professionals with a multidisciplinary competence to objectively audit these complex systems? That's the conversation the industry needs to be having right now. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.